The desert is often seen as an empty, desolate landscape, a place of profound silence, intense heat, and endless sand. But for historians and archaeologists, the desert is not empty at all. It is a vast archive of the past, where traces of ancient life are remarkably preserved beneath the dunes. So while we see a sea of sand, we are actually looking at a landscape rich with hidden stories. In reality, many of the world's deserts were once home to rivers, lakes, grasslands, and thriving communities. The landscape we see today is only the latest chapter in a much longer story. In this documentary, we follow that story. From early human settlements, to long-distance trade routes, to forgotten towns slowly being rediscovered. This is the history of the world that once existed beneath the sands. For most of human history, people have been drawn to water. Rivers, springs, and seasonal lakes shaped where people lived, worked, and traveled. Many regions that are dry today were once greener and more forgiving. Ancient lake beds, fossil river channels, and buried soils all show that environments have changed over time. In North Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, evidence suggests that thousands of years ago there were periods with more rainfall. During these times, grasslands and savanna-like environments allowed plants, animals, and humans to thrive where there is now desert. People hunted, herded animals, and later began to build more permanent settlements. As climates slowly shifted, some of these regions became drier. Some communities moved away. Others adapted by digging wells, storing water, and building in ways that protected them from sun and sand. Over many centuries, however, the combination of environmental change and shifting trade patterns caused some settlements to be abandoned. When people leave a place, nature begins to reclaim it. Walls collapse, roofs fall in, wind and sand do the rest. Over time, an entire village or town can disappear from sight. For archaeologists, those buried remains are not lost forever. They are waiting to be found. The process of finding them is careful and methodical. Sometimes, local communities preserve stories about old wells or ruins in the distance. Sometimes researchers examine old maps or travelers' accounts from many centuries ago, and today technology helps reveal what the eye can no longer see. From the air, patterns that are invisible on the ground can suddenly become clear. Lines of stones, traces of walls, or the shapes of ancient fields can be observed from above. Modern imaging tools can detect subtle differences in the land's surface, indicating where human activity once took place. These clues are then checked on the ground with traditional archaeological methods. Each discovery adds another piece to the puzzle. In many desert regions, archaeologists have identified the remains of early roads and trackways. These routes connected distant communities across harsh landscapes. They were used to move goods such as salt, spices, textiles, metals, grains, and animals. Caravans followed reliable paths to reach water sources and safe resting places. Where routes crossed, small settlements often appeared. These might begin as simple resting stations, then grow into villages, and eventually into towns. Markets formed. Storage buildings were constructed. Places of worship and gathering were built. These communities depended on both local resources and passing travelers. They became important links in regional and long-distance trade networks. But when trade shifted to other routes or local conditions changed, these towns could slowly decline. Over generations, the population might shrink. Buildings might be left empty. Without constant repair, sun and wind weaken stone and mud. Then, drifting sand covers the remains. When archaeologists begin work in such an area, they often start with surface surveys. They walk carefully across the terrain, mapping any fragments of pottery, stone tools, or building material. One piece by itself may not say much, but many pieces together begin to outline the shape of past human activity. Sometimes an old wall appears where sand has been blown aside. Sometimes a line of darker soil marks where a road or canal once lay. Each feature is recorded and studied. Excavation is done slowly and in small sections. Layers of soil are removed carefully. Each object is documented in place. By analyzing these layers, archaeologists can understand how long a site was occupied and how it changed through time. The work is steady and patient. It requires attention to detail and respect for the people who once lived there. Among the most interesting discoveries in desert archaeology are the remains of towns that existed for many centuries and then vanished from memory. These places were not necessarily large cities, but they played important roles in regional networks. Some controlled access to key water sources. Others stood at crossroads where several routes met. The layout of such towns often reflects their function. Narrow streets might connect markets to storage buildings. Defensive walls may surround the central area. Religious or administrative buildings stand out through their size or design. Artifacts found inside these structures help reconstruct daily life. Simple objects such as cooking pots, tools, gaming pieces, and jewelry all reveal information about habits, skills, and tastes. Imported goods show connections to faraway regions. Locally made items show how people adapted to their environment with available materials. Desert civilizations were not isolated. They took part in broader patterns of exchange and influence. Ideas about architecture, religion, art, and governance traveled along with goods. A pot made in one region might be copied in another with local variations. A symbol carved on a stone in one settlement might appear hundreds of kilometers away in another. This connectivity means that when we study a single site, we are not just learning about one community. We are also learning about how that community related to others. The buried town beneath the sand is part of a much larger story. This is one of the reasons why scholars are so interested in rediscovering forgotten desert settlements. They help fill gaps in our understanding of regional history. They show how people responded to changing conditions. And they remind us that many important chapters of human experience are still being uncovered. In recent decades, the pace of discovery has increased. Not because there were no sites before, but because methods have improved. Researchers now have access to better imaging tools, more precise dating techniques, and wider collaboration across disciplines. For example, geological studies help reconstruct past climates and landscapes. By examining sediments, pollen, and ancient shorelines, scientists can estimate when a region was wetter or drier. This information helps explain why people settled in certain areas and why they later moved away. Likewise, the study of animal bones and plant remains from archaeological sites offers insight into diets and economies. What species were present? Which ones were domesticated? Which plants were cultivated or gathered? Together, these lines of evidence create a more complete picture of life in the past. The phrase, "lost city beneath the sands," can sound dramatic, but in scientific terms, it often describes a gradual process. Few places disappear overnight. Instead, they go through cycles of growth, stability, decline, and abandonment. A trading center might flourish as long as a particular route is popular. When better routes appear elsewhere, the flow of travelers and goods can decrease. Without that activity, local economies suffer. Over time, inhabitants seek better opportunities elsewhere. In the desert, time and entropy work in concert. When a settlement is abandoned, nature begins its slow reclamation. Without constant human maintenance, buildings deteriorate at a pace dictated by their materials. Sun-dried mud brick walls, common in arid lands, soften in the rain and are scoured by wind. Even stone structures eventually fail as their mortar gives way. Wind and sand are the primary architects of burial. Roofs collapse, opening interiors to the sky. Slowly, sand fills the empty rooms and streets, blanketing the past in a protective yet obscuring layer. Millennia later, only subtle traces may remain on the surface. To an untrained eye, the area looks like an undisturbed stretch of land. But to researchers, it holds the quiet signatures of a past community. A faint discoloration in the soil, a subtle depression, or a scattering of pottery shards can be clues. These durable fragments are often the first sign that more lies beneath. Each piece is a data point, hinting at the technology, trade, and artistry of the people who lived here. The landscape itself becomes a text, waiting to be read. Much remains to be learned, and new technology provides powerful ways of seeing. From space, satellites with multispectral sensors can detect variations in soil and vegetation, revealing faint outlines of ancient farm fields or canals. Closer to the ground, aerial drones use LiDAR to map terrain with millimeter precision, digitally stripping away vegetation to uncover buried structures. These tools allow archaeologists to survey vast areas efficiently, identifying promising locations for investigation without disturbing the ground. Dating techniques like optically stimulated luminescence can even tell us the last time sand grains were exposed to sunlight, helping to date the very layers that buried a site. While technology guides the search, discovery still happens in many ways. Some of the most significant sites are found accidentally during modern construction. Others are found through systematic survey work, the result of years of patient observation. Whether a discovery is planned or fortuitous, the response is critical. The goal is to document and understand, not simply expose and forget. The first step is not to dig, but to record. Teams establish a precise grid, mapping every surface feature before any excavation begins, ensuring the context of every artifact is preserved. Preservation is a primary ethical concern. The moment a site is uncovered, it is exposed to new threats from the elements and human impact. For this reason, modern archaeology is inseparable from conservation. Many teams combine excavation with long-term preservation plans. They may choose to leave large parts of a site unexcavated, a practice known as preservation in place, protecting it for future generations who may have better technologies. For excavated areas, they may reinforce fragile structures or carefully backfill trenches after documentation. Where sites are open to the public, controlled pathways manage visitor impact, balancing our desire to connect with the past against the duty to protect it. The aim is to balance the need to learn with the need to protect. When we think about lost places, it is easy to imagine mystery for its own sake. But the most meaningful mysteries in archaeology are not about hidden treasure, they are about people. Who lived here? How did they organize their lives? What did they value? How did they relate to their neighbors? By answering these questions, archaeologists help us understand the diversity of human experiences across time and space. The desert settlements beneath the sands are not just curiosities. They are evidence of human resilience, creativity, and adaptation. They show that even in challenging environments, people found ways to build communities, maintain traditions, and connect with others. For centuries, our understanding of the past was shaped primarily by what was written down. The grand chronicles of kings, the official histories of empires. This created a narrative dominated by monumental cities and powerful rulers. But as we learn to read the landscape itself, our view of history becomes profoundly more inclusive. The major empires and their famous capitals will always be part of the story, their stone and marble testaments to centralized power. Yet alongside them, we are now beginning to see the vast, intricate network of smaller, quieter centers that form the true foundation of those larger structures. These were the places that produced the food, supplied the raw materials, and housed the majority of the population, whose lives were lived far from the gaze of royal scribes. A remote caravan town, once dismissed as a mere footnote, may turn out to be the crucial link in a continent-spanning trade network, its existence predicated on a single, carefully managed well. The goods that passed through, salt from a distant mine, textiles from a coastal city, copper ore from mountain foothills, connected disparate cultures and economies in a web of mutual dependence. Similarly, a cluster of modest houses, unassuming on the surface, may provide the first tangible evidence of a social class or a migrant community rarely described in official records. The layout of their homes, the tools they used, and the food they ate reconstructed from microscopic plant remains, tell a story of daily struggle and resilience that written history overlooked. This is history from the ground up, revealing the complex realities of ordinary life. The sands, once seen as a destructive force that buries and erases, are now understood as a unique preservative medium. They seal and protect, preserving both the grand and the ordinary with remarkable impartiality. The romantic story of a single lost city beneath the sands is, in reality, the story of many thousands of cities, towns, and villages. Each rose in response to a specific opportunity, a new trade route, a favorable climate period, a technological innovation. And each changed, adapted, and eventually fell silent for reasons just as complex. Their remains are a powerful reminder that landscapes are not static backdrops for human drama. They are dynamic systems. The shifting dunes, the changing rainfall patterns, and the fluctuating water table demanded that human societies constantly innovate and adapt, or else face decline. Uncovering this layered history requires a new kind of exploration. Today, archaeologists, geologists, climate scientists, and historians work in concert, pooling their expertise. They are joined by local communities whose ancestral knowledge of the land often provides the first clues. Using technologies like satellite imagery to spot ancient water channels from space, and ground-penetrating radar to map walls still buried deep beneath the surface, their efforts allow us to see far beyond what is visible to the naked eye. What appears to be an empty, barren desert is revealed to be a complex and deeply storied environment, a living archive, layered with the faint but persistent traces of ancient lives. Each discovery invites new questions. Each question pushes research further. In the end, the desert teaches patience. Its secrets are revealed slowly, in small fragments, through careful work. But each fragment matters. A single shard of pottery can confirm a date. A single wall can mark the edge of a neighborhood. A single well can explain why people chose to live where they did. Piece by piece, these clues form a picture of a world that existed long before ours, and yet faced some of the same challenges we know today. How do we find water? How do we move goods? How do we manage risk? How do we build something that lasts? These questions are timeless. The lost city beneath the sands is a powerful symbol of how much of human history lies outside the written record. For every well-known empire, countless communities are waiting to be recognized. Caravan hubs of the Sahara, way stations of the Arabian Peninsula, and towns along the Central Asian steppe. Each one represents a chapter of our collective story, etched into the landscape. By seeking them out, we are not just finding ruins. We are recovering entire libraries of human experience. By studying them, we see not only rulers, but the workers, families, and travelers who form the true foundation of civilization. Through the patient work of archaeology, we can reconstruct their world. A single shard of pottery tells us about their craft and trade. The faint outline of an ancient irrigation channel speaks volumes about their ingenuity. Using technologies like ground-penetrating radar and radiocarbon dating, we can anchor their stories firmly in time, transforming faint traces into a tangible history. And so, the desert that once seemed empty becomes full of voices, quiet but clear to those who learn how to listen. Listening requires more than technology. It requires respect. Every excavation is, by its nature, a form of destruction, which is why the decision to uncover a site is never taken lightly. It is a balance between the pursuit of knowledge and the duty of stewardship. Often, the most responsible action is to document, map, and then leave these fragile histories protected beneath their blanket of sand. Beneath the sands, history is not gone. It is simply waiting. It is a dynamic archive, not a static tomb, waiting for the moment when wind, light, and human curiosity align to uncover it once again. That is the ultimate story of the lost city, a story of landscapes changing, people adapting, and their traces enduring against all odds. These settlements were vital nodes in vast networks of trade and communication, connecting cultures across immense distances. Their story reminds us that adaptation is the core of human success. As long as there are questions, the search will continue. The desert teaches us that what appears lost may only be hidden, and what seems silent may simply be speaking a language we are just beginning to understand. Beneath the sands, part of our shared story still lies, quiet, preserved, and ready to be found.